Just need a motion to adopt as presented.
All those for? Aye. Those opposed? Okay, passes. Move on, we get started into the budget work session, discussion of revised budget draft with council requested changes.
So,
Turn it over.
good afternoon, Mayor Council. We, at the last budget work session, we went through line by line on pretty much every single department and line item. So I'm not going to bore you with that level of detail today. What you have in front of you is two different budgets. One of them is the tax rate at 5.63, which is the current tax rate that we have now. The changes that included was increasing the restorative maintenance to 200,000 and the preventative maintenance to 250,000. All the rest of the changes were pretty small and ancillary. And then the other budget is a 1 cent tax increase that brought it up to 475,000 in restorative maintenance and then 250 in preventative maintenance. So unless y'all want to go through each line item or specific departments and line items, that's pretty much the gist of the two documents. Are there any particular line items that you guys wanted to revisit?
I wanted to ask about page 9. What is that?
Hey, can you give me some more specifics?
Well, I don't know what it is. Hold on a second.
What's the department header?
Well, I don't know what it attaches to, which I guess is why I'm trying to find it right now. Is the budget in here on the agenda?
It's not, it's in your email.
Okay, hold on a minute. Let me pull it up.
The PDF page number?
Yeah, there was a page 9 in one of the attachments, and it looked like there was some kind of K in there, but there was no director. Parks and Rec maybe, but there was no director. I was
Hey, but
trying
no
to figure out
director.
What the numbers were. Let me see if I can find the email really quick.
So
Is this,
there's a new position.
Sorry.
There's a new position
Yeah,
in
that's-
Parks and Rec.
Go to 9.
Hang on, I think I know what you're talking about.
Keep on. Page 9. Is this it right here?
the class 50 page?
No. I don't.
Not for this?
Oh, maybe this is it right here, this page. It says class 60. What is that?
Let me see the.
Solid waste.
So, but then it has village manager, finance director. public
There's a
works-
portion of our salaries that we are allowed to allocate to solid waste based on a prorated percentage of our time that we spend on working on solid waste. So it helps kind of spread it around a little bit, so it's not all sitting in Gen Gov. Same with Public Works. You'll notice that the Public Works Director will have a percentage of their salary going into solid waste and another percentage going into roads. And then all of Public Works has a percentage going into roads and streets so that Powell Bill can cover it.
So like on page 8, for the project manager, there was
Mhm.
bunch, is it the same thing?
Yeah, so the project manager is going to be split across departments. So Gen Gov is getting some, Planning's getting some, Solid Waste is getting some, Parks and Rec is getting some, and so is Public Works, actually. It's going to be spread across all departments.
Are there any other questions about specific line items or
Yeah,
pages?
Christina, I think it was brought up, I think by the task force as to whether we'd like to compound the 3% or just 3% annually.
Yes, the roads task force.
Correct. And in my opinion, we ought to compound it
Okay,
and not just use auxiliary funds to cover it. The less pixie dust we have to spread during the course of the year, I think better off with. So let's just compound the 3% if it works for everybody.
I can make that recommendation to them so that they're aware. That's not really reflected in any of this that you're looking at now, but just so you are aware.
Yeah, but I would talk about financial.
Yeah. I'll make sure they're aware.
Oh, thank you.
So I guess what we're looking for from you all is direction on whether, which tax rate you feel most comfortable with, noting what would be available to put away in restorative maintenance as well as preventative maintenance, and how aggressive you want to be in starting to save for restorative maintenance. If you're willing to do a tax increase to hit the goal that you gave me at the last budget session, Mayor Pro Tem, then that would be the tax rate that I would need to hit that goal for restorative maintenance.
And just to remind me again, when we're talking about these increases, will they be kind of earmarked specifically to the roads and the roundabout, like the existing penny that we already did a couple of years ago?
So if you look inside of your roads and transportation, you should see a capital transfer. So that would answer that question on where it would be earmarked. And we would establish a capital reserve for restorative. So it would be reflected that in that matter.
It would be restricted.
So would it be restricted to just one aspect of it, restorative or roundabouts, or could it be both?
The way that we have it right now written is that we would establish a capital transfer for we would establish a capital reserve for restorative, and you already have the capital project for the roundabout, so that dollar
Okay,
would
so
still be
the
earmarked.
existing penny
Yeah,
at this point would still be dedicated toward the roundabout because we've still got another 2 years or so we need of that at a minimum to pay for that first roundabout. And then this other one that's being proposed, if we were to do it, would be a penny that would be specifically towards the restorative budget. Okay,
yeah, if
Thank
you
you.
look at class 40 in your budget line, I don't know exactly what page it is, because mine don't have page numbers, but it's class 40. And you'll see two line items that are in the very top table. One of them says transfer to capital projects, transfer to project restorative. Those are the two numbers that are reflected there.
And then, obviously every year we'll revisit the tax rate during budget season. And when we feel that at least the Bonds Grove roundabout is fully funded, then we will have council discussion on, do we keep that 1 cent allocated to roundabouts, but now consider doing them at the other critical intersections that we've discussed? Or do we drop that penny off, for instance, and we're just putting that extra penny towards restorative maintenance? So these are conversations we'll have every single year. If you guys decide to do more roundabouts or different improvements at those intersections, then you may choose to allocate a penny or 3/4 of a penny or whatever as we flush it out every year. So it's not necessarily a permanent 1 cent tax increase either. You guys could very well vote to do something different next year when you set your tax rate.
I will just mention to you real fast as you're comparing the two, is that the roads ad hoc group has not had time to come up with the number that's needed. So this is kind of, a shot in the dark in either direction, whether you do the 475 or whether you do the 250, whatever the number was. So they have not had yet time to formulate what that magic number is.
I would just say that I'm not comfortable doing any kind of a tax increase until we have a more solid plan
Okay.
in place. So I think that's a good start, what we're talking about doing.
The
But
200, the
just
two.
keeping it where it is at the 5.63. And that's a good start that we have a plan to at least, start saving for those things, and then we can address it when we have more information.
Is that the consensus of the board?
I have a
Yes,
question. With looking at the general fund, unassigned fund balance, it seems a little high at 60%. Would it make sense to transfer some of those funds into the restorative maintenance budget? Without doing a tax increase and to get to the 450 somehow?
Yeah, I mean, you certainly could. I would want to first just make sure that I don't need all of it for some cash flow. Like, we've got some projects. The good news is we're finishing up Village Hall Park. We're getting ready to hopefully start finishing up the loop that we already are under contract for. So the stream rehabilitation, we're kind of coming to the tail end of that too. So one of the reasons we kept unassigned fund balance intact was we were actually using it as a loan mechanism. So we have these grants that are reimbursable, but I have to front the cash and then wait to get reimbursed. So once that's kind of done, and from a cash flow standpoint, yeah, you absolutely could choose to do a one-time allocation from the unassigned fund balance. I would caution how much we do, because even though internally our goal that we set, back in 2012 was 8%, the minimum that we're required to have in unassigned fund balance is 34% by the LGC.
Right.
So to your point, I think at the last audit, they said we were at 90-something%. And so we definitely have room to move some of that money if we need to of course, yes.
Let me just piggyback real quick.
I'd like to
Um,
give, can I give a comment real quick?
Yeah.
I appreciate everybody's position with no tax increase, but I disagree with it. I'd like to see us take a minimum of a half a penny the first year. I'm just concerned that down the road, we're going to fall behind maybe. And instead of taking a 5 or 10% tax increase, we're going to be in a position to take a 20% tax increase. And I understand 1 penny is not a whole lot of money, but over 5.63 cents, it's roughly 20%. And anyway, that's my position. So I just want to be clear on that.
Okay. Just real quick before we pass over to the fund balance assigned, I just want to make sure you guys are aware too, once you assign that fund balance into a capital, it has to be spent into a capital. I always try to think of the unassigned fund balance as kind of like the free money that's not earmarked for certain purposes. So once you put it into a different bucket in that category, it does have to stay there and you can't pull it out for anything other than a capital project. So not to say that you would do that, but it would make more sense to keep it in unassigned and just know in the back of your mind, you want to earmark a certain amount so that you don't have issues with cash flow.
Or another option that's a little bit less restricted is we do have the savings account that we set up for streets and roads, which is an assigned fund balance. It is not restricted. It is just assigned. It's essentially, you've stated, council has stated, this is what we're using it for. This is the bucket where all of vehicle tag money goes. This is where the reserve fund that was created by previous council to supplement Powell bill because we knew it wasn't enough. So that money has a little bit more freedom. So there is nothing to say that you couldn't say, maybe we take some of unassigned fund balance and we put it in the assigned fund balance for streets with a notation that we're going to start our restorative maintenance there, at least earmark some of it there, if you wanted to not tie your hands. But it sounds like we're going to need the money eventually anyways, whether your hands are tied or not, but that is another option.
That's a good point. Thanks. So I hear there's a general consensus on keeping the tax rate the same, but one that potentially wants to go up a certain small percentage to offset increases in the future.
Yeah,
Address that real quick. If we, just to your point, I had recommended a 1 cent increase only to show you what it would take to get you to 475,000 in restorative. If we were to do a half instead, I had already earmarked 2. The additional penny got you another 275. So that's what put you at 475-ish. If you do a half a penny, it's roughly 138,000. Let's call it that. So if you did decide to go up a half a penny, you would be at, 6.13 instead of where you are now. And instead of putting 475,000 in restorative maintenance, you would be putting roughly 338, somewhere around there. So it is kind of a nice halfway mark if anyone else wanted to consider a half-cent increase.
yeah, I've been on the record for the last year or two, with the understanding that, I knew we had these obligations coming. I'm very glad what we did with the original 1 penny. My thoughts had been that knowing we're going to need these tax increases to some degree just to cover the roads. My thought had been kind of scheduling a half cent with the intent to do it like every other year. And then that would give us some time as we continue to get deeper into that road business and understanding what our own costs and upgrades and things like that, are going to run us. So we're actually working more with specific numbers. So, I'm glad we're able to put some additional towards it if we stay at the current tax rate. I don't know that I'd want to raise a full penny, just because, that's not something that I've supported to this point. I was looking hopefully to do more of a half cent or so. But I think it's important to explain to the folks in the village and the residents that as we have the obligations for the existing roads, as we continue to take over more of the subdivision roads, there's costs that come with that. And if you take an average $1 million house in Marvin, and it's probably a little bit more than that, but for easy math, 0563 comes out to about $563 a year in taxes, which for the value you get from the roads, the sheriffs, any number of things that's probably a fraction of what a lot of folks in Marvin are paying to their own HOA fees. So, I think it's important to keep in context, what that number actually is on an average basis. But really, we need to understand the obligations that we do have and whether we raise it a little bit now or more later. We've got obligations that are going to need to be funded. And right now, we're still pretty much at the bottom of all POW bill fund, participating municipalities within the state. And, I don't like raising my own taxes as much as anybody else's. So, but we do have some obligations we're going to have to take care of, whether it's now or in the future.
Anybody else?
I'm not comfortable raising taxes. I mean, we know there's going to be an expense, right? But I feel like it's kind of like a meme or like a stereotypical government kind of thing. Like, I don't know what the numbers are, but we're going to raise taxes in case. And I'd kind of rather wait till we've kind of put together a better idea of what those costs are going to be and kind of adjust at that point. I do get, the sense in planning, but to the point of like the 583 or 563 for Marvin, a lot of the services we get come from the county, from the state. And I think it brings up that argument of, well, the de-annexation, right? Like, is it worth? So I'm just more comfortable waiting until we've formulated this a little better and have an idea what the costs are and then kind of adjust at that point.
Yeah, and I feel, first off, commendable to you that you did a great job with the first budget that came. That was great. And so at 563, to what John was saying, and I agreed with him from the last meeting, was going up and staying where we're at right now is almost kind of that half a cent with what you originally had put together as a budget. So, yeah, that's something we can look at next year, is going up another half, So I'm fine with it, keeping it as it is.
Just round off the commentary. I think we should keep it where it is now too, if not even lower it. And the reason why I say that is the task force that we've appointed to take a look at the roads hasn't completed its work. So we're kind of, to Christina's words, we're kind of taking a shot in the dark on what it is that we actually ought to be putting away, first of all. And then secondly, I think we should look more critically at the unassigned fund balance to determine whether or not we should be using more of the funds from that for the restorative maintenance before we go ahead and pull the trigger on a tax increase.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think raising taxes is the easy solution, but I think if we work through this and we get really good data and we can hold our tax rate for as long as we can, we do that. I mean, everyone's facing inflation right now on their home insurance, their property taxes, their HOA dues, everything. It's just going to force us to be a lot more disciplined in our spending and how we budget as a village. And I'd like to give it a shot for at least a year and see how we do with the 0.0563. That would be my position.
Did we leave anybody out? Sounds like there's a consensus to leave it at the current tax rate.
Yeah.
Okay. That being said, are there any other specific line items that you guys wanted to talk about? I know there was some conversation at one point about retreat, doing offsite retreat. I know we had talked about that. We put it in the budget this year that you're looking at today as not an offsite retreat. So that's something that if you guys want to talk about that, we'll have to adjust that one. Is there anything else in particular that you guys wanted to go back and look at before we move on?
I mean, basically, this will be the last time that I'll have the ability to edit the budget, any expense account or any department before it comes to you. By the time we present it to you in May, you'll be giving your final stamp of approval, and then we'll issue the public hearing notice and you'll adopt it June 1st. So there is time, but you'd have to tell me now what changes you would want, and then I would present that to you in May.
Let me just ask you this, Jill and Christina, are there any areas of concern in the budget that we're looking at now?
We don't really have any areas of concern. But, you know, we do have a very healthy unassigned fund balance. So if, I would be concerned if we didn't, but because we do, if there's any emergency or any major repairs that had to happen, we would, you know, easily be able to address it with some unassigned fund balance. So we did cut, we did a 5-year look back on a lot of the departments and their expense accounts. And we did cut quite a few things so that we could make more room in the budget for restorative maintenance. So I think we've done a good job, and I think having the ability to move money around within departments, you know, there's always going to be some expense accounts that you spend less and some you go over, but we have the ability to shuffle that money around as long as we don't go over the department as a whole. We can have some fluidity to move things. So we feel pretty good about the budget that we've presented you, that there's no shortfalls that we should be concerned about.
So I will say too, a couple of things, just that would concern me a little bit is if our attorney legal bills are continuing at the rate that they are now, that is a little bit of a concern. There's been some conversations today, not necessarily with you guys, but with residents doing requests for roundabout maintenance on Tom Short. If that's something that we pick up, that'll be an increase that we have not accounted for. Additionally, if you've read some of the emails, we've got some irrigation issues at the park that we're going to have to potentially increase our utilities. So that is something that we may have to address at some point. So just, we did decrease public works pretty substantially in other individual line items. So if we're asking them to do more work, it's just going to be, you know, more equipment needed, more types of materials needed as well, potentially more labor. I don't really know the gist on that one, but.
And just one thing that kind of plays into all of this as well is that part of the reason why we're able to kind of keep the tax rate where it is, but not necessarily short ourselves in the roads and some other areas, is because we still have some significant amount of growth of new homes coming online. One of the things that we do face over the next 2 to 3 years is that we don't have very many large developable properties left. So we're not going to be bringing in new taxpayers that are have been kind of the engine that has allowed us to bring on more homes without increasing the tax rate. So I think it's important that people realize that as well as we kind of push off more budget decisions to the future. More of that is going to fall back on, the existing residents, because we won't be bringing as many new residents online. Thank you.
I noticed that you didn't have the 5K in it, I guess this upcoming year. I know PRG was talking about wanting to add it back.
Yeah, I took it out because I didn't want you all to feel pressure to make a decision now. The 5K is self-supporting. People pay to do it. So typically what they pay tends to cover the full expense. So it'll be a wash. So if you guys do decide, we still have to find a vendor that we feel is affordable so that it is a wash, which is what I'm currently working on. So if we do decide to ask you all to reconsider it, I would do a budget amendment, but it would be a wash and it would be a net zero change in the budget. Hopefully, if we can find a vendor and we think, we can probably get it 90% covered and it might cost us $1,000, then we'll probably, I'm sure I can find $1,000 in Parks and Rec to cover it, but we'll bring that back to you at that time, should we decide.
And what about farmer's market costs?
So the farmer's market's a capital, and you have a separate capital reserve fund for that, a capital project fund. It currently has $25,000 in it. It's been sitting in there for like ever and a day. And so that would be where any money that is spent on farmer's market, we would want to spend it out of that first.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Are there any other questions with the budget as proposed? Last minute changes or any, okay. So unless y'all have anything else, we will present the manager's budget message based on the current budget tax rate with all the items that you see here. And then you guys will see that shortly, and then we'll have the public hearing. We'll set the public hearing at the next meeting, and we'll have it on May 18th. Or no, we're setting it tonight.
No, the public hearing?
Yeah.
We'll do that May 18th and then
Okay.
we'll adopt June 1st. Can I just add, I just want to add one thing too. After the ad hoc group is done analyzing the roads, at any time during the fiscal year, we can revisit this conversation of maybe in lieu of a tax increase, taking some unassigned fund balance and moving it and allocating it somewhere. That would just be a simple budget amendment that you all would adopt. And we can do that at any time during the fiscal year after they're done doing their analysis. So it doesn't have to wait until next budget season. We can do it at any time as long as it makes fiscal sense to do so.
Any other comments? Okay,
Thanks for your effort.
I think we're ready to move on to the next item, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, the next item is we're going to discuss as well as consider the approval of neighborhood partnership program and outside funding.
So it's been a couple weeks before I've looked at this, and you'll have to bear with me because I'm going to wing this one. So we had prepared a neighborhood partnership program kind of proposal to you all that essentially would allow us to achieve a couple of missions and goals while also involving HOAs that wanted some collaboration in meeting some of their goals as well. This would be done through a partnership program where the HOA essentially wants to come to the table and be a cooperative partner so we can look for grant funding that might be out there on various things that they are looking to achieve, like, for example, stream restoration. If there's any safety funding that we find for street improvements or pedestrian crosswalks or anything like that. That's just to name a few of them. Inside of this proposal, we've also put in what we call a collaborative project fund, which is essentially a micro grant that we would fund to cooperative HOAs that are looking for anything to do with the program areas that we identified. It consisted of public safety and wellness, like traffic calming or radars, signage, environmental sustainability, which is the butterfly garden, stream cleanups, community education, historical preservation, youth development or senior care, neighborhood revitalization or beautification projects. Those are just some things that we came up with. Y'all might want to delete some, you might want to add some, but those are a couple of areas of focus that may be of interest. The micro grants range anywhere from $250 to $2,500 would be the max. And essentially, we would want that HOA to come to the table with a match as well.
Or nonprofit.
Or nonprofit. We did put in $6,000 in this year's budget for the funding of a couple of these, however y'all want to break it down. And that's pretty much the gist. We currently do not have a policy that allows us to contribute to nonprofits, which is the next item. You'll see a policy that we put together for outside community partnership funding. So we would try to tie both of them into this project. So you would look at grant funding opportunities or any request one time a year. A lot of times when you're in office, you'll get, questions and requests from various nonprofits, as you've already seen in your tenure. We want to make sure we're trying to encompass that into one kind of package.
So I think there's good intent behind this, but when it comes time to we start receiving these, requests and so forth, is there some sort of specific process that we're going to go through in terms of scoring, one project versus another? Because I could see, once you start approving a couple of those projects, those particular neighborhoods are going to be looked at as the favored ones, and the ones that didn't get ones approved are going to feel that they weren't favored. And how are we going to navigate that part of the process?
So our goal is to have it as open and transparent as possible. We will have a deadline for when the applications will open. It'll be open to anyone who wants to apply. They'll send their applications to Austin. He will really just collect and gather their presentations, and they will be required to come before council at your September meeting and get up and pitch their grant requests to you. You guys will hear these live in real time, and any presentations that they put up on the screen. We can probably help put together some type of scoring matrix if you want our help with that. That should be really easy for us to do, but it kind of depends on, each of you might score different things based on your own personal, preferences. But at the end of the day, staff is going to kind of take ourselves out of it and have council discuss amongst yourselves and kind of decide which grants you want to approve, knowing you've got $6,000 budgeted and you might have multiple agencies vying for funds. And then, you know, you guys will make that decision. We will, they will know, you know, who's been awarded what. And then from there, they have until May 1st to complete their projects. And then they have to turn in a report to me by May 30th of the fiscal year with showing it's been completed, what they spent the funds on, and the impact that it had comparable to the scope that they said they would do it for. So, I mean, I hope that answers the question, and I hope that's sufficient for you all, but we thought it was best to let you all as a group just see everybody who's asking for money and you guys decide rather than us kind of be a conduit.
Well, I guess from a council perspective, do we feel that those should be done in a more objective way or subjective way? Because
So I'll mention this real fast because when we have, just for example, when we have RFPs for engineering firms, we base it off of qualifications. And Hunter and I have worked together, putting together a matrix that involves more of a qualitative analysis where we look at different things like, I'm just going to make some stuff up here, you know, the experience that people have in the scope of work that we're doing, if they have specific experience in the grant that we're trying to administer, if there's no litigation history, if their project manager is local. So we base this kind of criteria on what's important to us and what we think is going to succeed in Marvin. If you guys want to tell us what your criteria should be in looking at this more objectively, and then weight what you think is more important, the dollar amount, if it's public safety related, we'll weight that ×2. So we can put together some criteria to make it more objective depending on what your potential criterias are for criteria.
I agree with John. I think we need to be very prescriptive. And the reason I say that is Angel and I, and this is a small example, but we were going to have a garden in the community garden. Well, there was a huge demand for the community garden. The Angel now bowed out. And the reason we bowed out is we didn't want anybody to feel that, you know, we had the advantage of some other resident. And Joe and I were just talking about a street cleanup. We've got a creek, the Graham sent in something this week actually about flooding when it rains and there's a tree going across it. Well, he's in Bridle Path, we're in Wyndham Hall, we share the creek. And my question is, as part of this, I guess going to John's point, is if we're prescriptive about it, should we recuse ourselves from participation in this program? Because the one thing I don't want to have is this perception of council getting the advantage of funding from somebody, whether it's real or not, it doesn't matter. It's the perception. And I don't think this council needs any perception that we're taking advantage of a program. So as we develop this program, to John's point, and make it objective, I just think it would be in the best interest of council to bow out of it. Just my opinion.
Yeah, and if any council member has a case that comes up that involves their HOA, they are more than welcome to disclose that conflict, let you all make a vote as to if you think it's a conflict, and then that person just doesn't have a vote so that it is non-biased, so.
Yeah, but further to Bob's point, there's always going to be a winner and there's always going to be a loser, and the losers are going to say that they weren't treated fairly.
Right.
So that's one thing that I'm concerned about. And did I hear you say correctly that we have not made charitable contributions in the past? Did I hear that right? Or we have?
We have done micro grants in the past, but like, you know, if the Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts say, hey, we want you to pay us $500 so we can upgrade our uniforms, we just can't, we can't just donate that money. But we have been able to give little grants to habitat builders, and we've, National Wildlife Federation, we've supported them because we get our certified wildlife habitats and things like that. But typically you'll have people that will just say, oh, we're a nonprofit and we have a good cause and we're a charity that supports kids, can you be a sponsor and we'll put the logo on our uniforms or something like that. That is not something we can do. So that was the other conversation we had. Chaplain will be at that meeting in September, as will I. So if we hear, a group asking for money for something that we feel is the way the statute reads is we cannot give funding to anything that we as a municipality are not already authorized to spend money on by the state. So if we're not authorized by the state to spend the funds on it, then we can't turn around and give it to a third party to do it. But if we are allowed to do it and this third party is going to do it for us, then we can contribute, if that makes sense. So he'll be a second set of eyes and I'll be a third to kind of raise a little concern. And that doesn't mean that group gets told that they can't do anything at all, but it might just be that they get some feedback like, hey, great presentation, love what you're trying to do. We'll just need you to adjust your scope of work. That one thing is something we can't necessarily cover, but the rest of your presentation sounds great. And we can allow them to kind of adjust and adapt.
Real quick question, Jill, is there anything that we need to do to keep our Tree City USA status where we give to something that we have to do it because we're a member of that organization and not necessarily because we're given handouts?
There are requirements for us keeping our Tree City. A lot of it has to do with us spending money on planting trees, tree pruning, tree removal even, and Hunter can probably speak to this, but we make sure that we are budgeting for and spending what we need to. And we also, the good news is our urban, Keith, let's call him our tree guy, urban forester.
Yeah.
He takes up a big chunk of that. We also have a very worth it but expensive tree feeding schedule for all of these beautiful old trees that we maintain here and at the park. So all of the money that we spend to preserve these beautiful trees, that goes towards that as well. And then pruning, removal, and planting. So the Arbor Day event is another one that helps us meet the requirements for Tree City. So yes, we do have requirements and we do closely monitor that so we can keep our certification.
I believe Hunter actually had that in the CIP. Did you not have that, one of those for the tree preservation?
I mean, no, I mean, Jill kind of answered the question. Like
Okay.
when we did it last year, I believe it's $2 per capita that we have to do to meet that requirement. We started looking at everything and we were like, we're going to hit this, no problem. I don't have the exact right here in front of me, but I think we were anywhere from $3 to $4 per capita. And those are routine maintenance things. And that doesn't include if we do a special planting type event where we're potentially spending more money to get trees or anything planting for the Arbor Day. So it's within the current confines of how we operate. We're meeting that intent for sure.
Are there any other questions on the program or the micro grants or anything like that? We have asked for consideration of these two programs, the program and the policy, just so you guys are aware. So if y'all are okay with what we've presented, we are asking for a motion.
There is one in your system. To approve the Neighborhood Partnership Program and adopt the outside funding policy as presented.
All those for?
Aye.
Aye.
And Mr. Mayor, that pretty much concludes our budget work session. So if there's any other budgetary type items that you guys wish to talk about, we're here to answer questions. Otherwise, you're good to adjourn.
I'm just going to comment that the timeline for this neighborhood funding program is that the applications will go live June 1st. So now that you all have approved this, I will finalize the application and I have a PowerPoint presentation that I'm just going to put some finishing touches on. We'll start promoting it on social media, on our website. Feel free, if you're already getting communication from nonprofits or HOAs that want to consider it. I think you have an HOA meeting coming up soon.
May the 12th.
Okay, so that would be a great place to kind of let them know about this as well. And then, I'll get that application ready and we'll start promoting and it will open June 1st. And then we'll just kind of see how it goes. We might fine tune this. This is like the first time that we've really done it this way. And so we're all kind of, we're going to see how it goes. And then we'll maybe make some tweaks for next year, but fingers crossed it works out pretty well.
Does someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those for?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, we adjourn. Thank you.